do your best to try to identify, well, what is the personality type of this child?
Who is this child?
That actually, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of knowledge to say, I can adjust some of my words, some of my approaches, some of my actions in a way that actually fits who this child is and how they're wired to be. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kid's perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We are always excited to be meeting you here, and we would love to hear from you. And there's a couple ways that you can reach out to us and maybe make a suggestion of something we could talk about. You can go to mikeandkimcoaching.com/share, and you can ask a question, you can suggest a topic. We would love to hear from you on that. Another thing you can do is you can leave us a rating or a review over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might be listening that actually has a rating system, because we would just love to know how we're doing for you, and we would really appreciate that. And while you're there, hit subscribe, because we don't want you to miss anything. Well, we've been talking a lot about parenting, and that's a subject that comes up a lot when we're working with blended families. And one of the things we want to kind of pause this week and talk about it from a different perspective. And here's the statement I want you to think about. Parenting is more than discipline. It can be really easy for us to get stuck in the mindset about discipline. What do we need to teach our kids? And correct them. And all the things that come with just the normal day-to-day. But we also want to be able to put some energy into other areas of parenting. And before we dive into exactly what we're talking about today, I just want to share a little story. I remember years ago, it had to have been like a decade ago. Annika was probably 15, 16. If you're new to the podcast, Annika is Kim's daughter from a previous marriage. And I remember there's a highway, like I remember the vehicle we were in, and we were driving down the highway, and I was really in a complaining mood. And I was just irritated with some of the ways that Annika approached life. The way that she was never on time for anything. That's what it felt like to me, right? I say don't use the word never or always, but I just felt like she was never on time. It felt like it was impossible for her to notice when she left stuff laying around the house. It wasn't just that she was a messy kid, but she just didn't even notice it.
She was oblivious to her mess.
Yeah. And I remember, telling you, you know what? When I was this age, I was getting good grades and I had my things organized and I was on time for stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I was probably not very kind about the way I was sharing that. And you said something. Do you remember what you said to me?
I remember saying, Mike, she's not you.
Yeah. Now, the truth is you probably were really irritated in that moment.
Sure.
And you just wanted me to back off.
Right.
And so it wasn't, I've said often, like, Kim in her wisdom has said, hey, Mike, she's not you. Sometimes it was Kim in her irritation said, Mike, she's not you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely wanted you to ease up on her.
Yeah. But what was interesting is in that moment, I remember it striking me, kind of struck my heart, really, to go, oh, you know what? I'm complaining a lot about Annika, and I'm actually saying it in a way that is labeling her. It's saying she is this or she isn't that. And I started to realize, you know what? I bet that's creating a wedge between me and Annika. And actually, every time I complain about it to you, it's really creating a wedge between me and you as well.
Especially since I have a lot of the same traits that Annika does.
Well, maybe that's true.
I happen to be late a lot and messy as well.
Yeah. The truth is, all of us, parents, step-parents, we want our kids and our stepkids to thrive. Like we want to be able to correct them. Discipline is part of the process and all of that. And we want them to thrive, not just today, like right now, but certainly as they enter adulthood as well.
Right, that's our job.
Yeah. But sometimes we just get stuck in this piece of parenting that can be all about telling our kids what they should or shouldn't do. I was really stuck there that day. We stay in cop mode, telling them how to behave. And if we're really honest, if I'm really honest about that moment for me, we approach that from a place of just trying to turn them into little copies of ourselves. I wanted Annika to act the way I was acting. That was why I was saying, hey, back when I was 15 and 16, this is the way I acted.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't think it was malicious or self-centered or anything.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's just very natural for us to believe that the way we do things is the right way of doing things, right? So we want to teach our kids and our stepkids the right way of approaching life because we've got it all figured out.
Yeah. Well, all right. Podcast over. Perfect.
But no, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
A lot more, actually.
Totally. All right. I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to use an analogy that maybe you'll connect with you and maybe won't. We got
analogy time.
Yeah, we got a real lesson in this a couple summers ago, right? We decided we have a couple of raised gardens, and usually in one we plant some flowers, and the other one we try to do vegetables. I say try because we're not always successful.
Right.
But every year we try to do something like that. Well, this particular year we thought, hey, maybe we ought to do a sunflower.
It was actually our daughter Phoebe.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Phoebe wanted a sunflower. You're right.
Yeah.
And so we had never done sunflowers before. And so we grabbed the little package and we sort of assumed.
Phoebe grabbed the little package.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not getting the details 100% right. But that little package, we thought we were getting that little frilly variety that would be about 5-6 feet tall and hopefully produce, multiple bright blooms.
Right. That's what we were picturing.
That's exactly what we thought we were going to get. Well, the stock started to grow and we kind of got excited about that. We're like, hey, all right, at least we got some growth, right? We could not believe how rapidly this thing grew.
You could literally watch it grow if you wanted to.
Just about every day we would see growth. It would grow a little bit in the stalk and then a little bud would form. And that turned into a leaf and we thought, cool, here comes a bloom. But then the stalk just continued going and we thought, okay, this next one, it's going to be a bloom. And it just kept going. Well, pretty soon it hit about 8 feet tall.
Big, thick stalk.
Yeah. And our raised garden is kind of under an eave here by our office. And next thing we knew, it was actually hitting the bottom of the eave. Yeah. And so we're kind of scratching our heads like, well, what in the world happened? What are we doing with this thing?
Definitely not what we expected.
That's right. So Kim went and dug out the seed packet. And in really small print, we found the answer. It said American Giant.
That was the variety. There's different varieties of sunflowers.
Exactly. After just this tiny little bit of research, we discovered that our sunflower was destined to reach a height much higher than we had planned for. Right? Our plan for him, we did call him a him. It was to peak out around 6 feet, but that wasn't really enough for him. Our research told us that he was actually going to reach 15 to 16 feet tall. So we had to make a choice. We could have approached it in lots of different things. We could have tried to talk that sunflower out of growing and try to become a different variety, that frilly variety, right? Tell him
we had in mind.
You should stop growing and start blooming the way that we want you. We could have actually tied him up, bound him up under that eave and tried to stunt the growth and see what would happen. We could have just pulled him out of the garden and said, no more of you.
Yeah, decided this isn't what we wanted.
Yeah. But what we ultimately decided to do was to actually kind of nurture him to become what he was originally intended to be, that American Giant.
Right. His name was Sonny, by the way.
Yes.
I do remember
that was quite appropriate, wasn't it? Now, we used some bamboo sticks and we used some plant ties and we actually kind of guided him out from underneath that eave because we knew there were a few things that we could do simply to make life a little bit easier for him to reach who he needed to be.
Right. What he was intended to become.
And it wasn't until quite a while later that we realized, you know what? That's kind of like raising kids. because kids are a little bit like that sunflower. There's a book that we really like called Nurture by Nature. And it talks about personality types of our kids and how we approach our kids from a parenting perspective as it relates to how they're already naturally wired to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't really know who your kids are until they start growing, right? You might have some ideas about who you want each of your children to be or what you think they should be, but they don't always fit the mold that you've plotted out for them in your mind.
Right. Which is usually a little copy of me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're all wired differently. Children and adults are wired to perceive and respond to the world around them in unique ways based on their personality type, or we like to also say their wiring.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's an important aspect of parenting. Remember earlier I said parenting is more than discipline. And I love, it kind of fits with our analogy, but I love what Paul and Barbara Teeger say in Nurture by Nature. They say, just as the gardener accepts without question or resistance the plant's requirements and provides the right conditions that each plant needs to grow and flourish, so too do we parents need to custom design our parenting to fit the natural needs of each individual child. And this is so challenging at times. I think, this is challenging in first families, but it can be challenging in blended families as well. One of the things that we talk a lot about with couples that we coach often is not lumping our two bio unit kids into big lumps of kids.
Yeah.
We've got your kids and we've got my kids. Your kids are all responding this way. My kids are all responding that way. But the truth is each one of those kids within those two different groups are unique. They have a unique core wiring. And it could be that we need to respond to them a little bit differently individually, not just lumping kids in with the whole.
Yeah. And that's how we skillfully parent children, is we understand what their needs are based on who they are, and then we adapt our own approach so that we can really influence them in positive ways rather than treating them like there's something that is missing.
Absolutely. So why in the world are we talking about this? What's important about this? Now, we didn't start really stumbling over the reality of this until we had our mutual kids. Right. So we've had all this experience and challenge in our blended family dynamics. But really right now in this season of life, we're living in a season where it's more like a first family. It feels more like a first family.
Most of the time. The daily stuff.
Yeah, because our two youngest are mutual kids and they're still at home. Right.
Yeah.
And we've learned a ton about this whole idea around parenting through personality types simply by watching these two individual kids grow up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about just like 4 things that are important or reasons that we would challenge you to consider learning a new way to parent kids through the lens of personality types. And then we'll talk more about that Nurture by Nature book here in just a minute.
This kind of insight can be invaluable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The first thing is, like I just said, kids are different. Each child in your home likely has a different personality type. They're each going to learn in a different way. They're going to apply their learning to life uniquely.
Sure.
They're simply going to do life a little bit different because that wiring is different.
Yeah.
And discovering the uniqueness of each child is actually going to help you teach them your values in a way that they can really absorb them.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to do that.
Yeah. And what personality types really reveal are things like what drains their energy.
Or fills their energy.
Their energy. How they organize their outer world.
Yeah.
How they perceive the world around them. Things like that.
And how they go about making decisions.
Exactly.
That can really explain a lot. Right. But, I think about, just watching our younger kids, Phoebe and Jacob, in the same environment, same parents. They have not had the same type of challenges that Annika had as far as moving between two homes and that kind of thing, but how starkly different they are.
From day one.
Absolutely. I think about how they learn. Do you remember when Phoebe had challenges with spelling?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you go about helping her with her spelling? We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Well, for her learning style, she really needed everything to be fun and to be a game. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Jacob, you could sit down and just study spelling. We're just going to study, and he could focus and be fine, but she could not focus in that way. Mm. And so I would take her spelling words. I would put the alphabet up on the wall on Post-it notes. So each letter had a Post-it, and I would give her a word, and she would put the words together with these Post-it notes. Actually, it was on a sliding glass window.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was fun for her to be able to physically pick up and move the Post-it notes into place. And then we would, when she got them wrong, we would, change them. And it would be a creative experience for her.
Totally. So for Phoebe, she interprets the world around her to kind of be a game. And it's imaginative and creative and all of that.
Much so.
Jacob is actually opposite. He really relates to just real life. Yeah. He doesn't have a whole lot of time for, playing, make-believe or anything like that.
Yeah, not much fluff.
No,
needed.
And there was a stark difference that we recognized between the two of them. That means if they're interpreting the world around them that way, that means we've got to show up differently as parents so that we can guide them toward the values and the behaviors that they really need to understand.
Yeah, because if I had forced Jacob into that learning style and said, hey, we're going to do the Post-it note game so you can learn your words, there's no way he would hang with that. No. He would be bored in 5 seconds. Yeah. He just wants to sit down and study. And
he would have resisted it. Yeah, for sure. It's really funny. We think about how they organize their outer world.
Oh, yeah.
Just walk into their rooms and you can see the stark difference. Phoebe she loves a lot of variety and lots of stuff and all of that. You can hardly walk through a room. Jacob, it's like a ghost town. There's nothing there. He gets rid of anything he really doesn't care about.
He's a minimalist.
It's a total minimalist. I mean, there's stark differences between these two. And we all see that. I think parents and step-parents, they see that in a lot of their kids. However, they don't often take the time to think, well, wait, how does that impact my parenting?
Right.
Does that mean I might need to show up a little bit differently for each of those children? Or do we just kind of lump them all in together?
Yeah.
So recognizing how different each individual kid is really important in the way that we connect with them and we parent them toward their adulthood.
Yeah, because you want the things that you teach them, you want them to be able to really absorb them and internalize them. And if you're approaching them in a way that they can't do that based on their wiring, you're kind of spinning your own wheels.
Yeah. Now, here's the challenge. We are different too. So often, it's actually like when I think about certain aspects of Jacob's personality, I often feel a lot more at ease parenting him because he's wired a lot like me.
Right.
But then I have to really be intentional and think through the way that I parent the girls or the way that I connect with the girls because both of them are actually wired in a lot of ways that are very different than me.
Yeah.
And so I've got to approach that in a way, like you just said, for them to absorb what I'm trying to communicate to them.
Yeah.
So the first point is kids are different. And so let's not lump them into one grouping, but let's start to look at them through the lens of individual traits and see what that might inform around our parenting.
And also stay away from comparing.
Yeah.
We're comparing our kids just for the example.
For comparison's sake. Yeah.
We really
can't you be more like your brother?
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference
like that at
there.
All. That's right. Which actually is a great segue to our next point. And that is when we can approach our kids from their personality type perspective, we are setting up positive self-perceptions
for them. Yeah.
That's right. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, kids naturally want to please their parents, right? Even though it doesn't always feel that way, they really do. They try to meet our expectations, but often they can sense when they aren't fitting our mold or when we're disappointed. And their feelings of missing the mark can lead to self-esteem and self-confidence issues in kids, like they just can't get it right. So parenting based on personality type can help you to avoid this unintentional result of your kids wondering, about themselves. Is there something wrong with me because I can't please my parent?
Yep.
Whereas when we approach them from this perspective of personality type, we're actually honoring who they are.
Totally.
And they can feel that too. They can sense that.
Exactly. I love this quote from the Tegans about this exact thing. They say, when a measure of a child's worth is tied to how she compares to our estimation of what's good or valuable, we undermine her confidence. So I just had a conversation with Phoebe recently where I've said some things to her that she took in a way that actually undermined her confidence. I was so grateful she shared it with me because it undermined what she saw as my confidence in her. And it wasn't that I was trying to be malicious. I wasn't trying to be mean. And I have a ton of confidence in her ability. And but what came through, because her personality type sometimes is very different than mine, we disconnected. And I made a negative impact on her self-perception.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about how we're interacting with our kids, we've got to be aware of how is it that they are hearing what we're telling them. I grew up in a home where the expectations were extremely high, and it was an extremely structured home. One of the positive parts about that is I'm naturally wired to be fairly structured, but the downside was that I never felt like I was good enough. I would come home with B's, and the question was, why didn't you get an A? And while the expectations were high in my home, I'm not sure that my parents really expected perfection. They didn't consciously expect perfection, but what they communicated was that perfection was expected.
That was the message.
Does that make sense?
That was the message you were sent by how they treated and interacted.
Absolutely. And I think that some of that was related to them not necessarily taking the time to say, who is this kid? How is he wired? And what is it that we can do as parents, because we're the ones who are responsible, to really identify that and then start to put some things down in a way that I could pick it up, in a way that I could absorb and really understand, and that began to fill my bucket rather than drain my bucket.
Right.
And so that my positive self-perception might be a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good segue into the next point.
Yeah.
Which is all around effective teaching. And we've kind of already touched on this, but we all want our kids and our stepkids to be able to fully internalize the values that we're working to teach them.
That's true.
The life skills, the character traits, and the values that are important to us. And the best way to ensure that kids are actually picking up what we're laying down or what we want to lay down for them is to parent them in a way that connects with their unique personality type. In the best possible connection.
Yeah. So interesting. Like another thing, I can use Phoebe and Jacob to kind of compare this is, Phoebe and I, some of our great connection time where we talk about life lessons and really identify with each other and then explore what she might be challenged by in the moment. It's, again, around games. So
Always.
we have a habit of, kind of every other week right now. It used to be every week where we grab a coffee from the local coffee shop and then we play a card game. And it usually outlasts an hour, hour and a half. And we have probably our best conversations while we're just playing a card game. For Jacob, it's completely different. In fact, it was only a few months ago where I was talking to him about some things I've noticed in his choices and whatnot. And I said, look, I don't want to be a nag. I don't want to be lecturing you. And he actually stopped me and he said, no, Dad, it's good. It's okay for you to talk to me about these things. And he just wants it straight up.
Yeah.
He wants it straightforward. He doesn't need frill. He doesn't need any of that.
Need the game.
He's just like, just tell me. And then I see him actually respond to it. And I realize, man, these two just absorb information completely differently.
Yeah. And Annika's one that likes to do something physical before you have those deep conversations.
Oh, man,
She'll want to play a basketball game or go work out or
tell me
go
about
for a swim with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once she gets that kind of out of her system, then she wants to communicate and connect.
Yeah, I know you're thinking about that time when I took her to it's a camp in California called JH Ranch, and it was supposed to be this time where we were going to go connect and talk, and I was so looking forward to that because I'm a connector.
Yeah, you were all set to go.
I'm ready to go. And she was like, I think I just want to go shoot hoops. Now, to most dads or stepdads might think, hey, that sounds great, right? But you got to understand, I was kind of raised as a band geek. I never was into sports, and I can't hit the broadside of a barn with a basketball. And
this
so
is true.
Thanks for that vote of confidence. And so here we are, all these dad and daughter duos are all over this field. Literally, literally there's like hills of people looking down on the basketball courts.
Even
and
worse
I'm like,
for you.
oh my gosh, great. All these dads are watching me, right? But you know what? I just said, you know what? Okay, I'm going to do what she wants to do. I'm going to meet her where she is in this moment. And it lasted about 10, 15 minutes. And then she goes, okay, I'm ready to go talk now. And after that, we had probably one of the most meaningful conversations we've ever had in our entire relationship. And I had to realize, wow, all I had to do was give a little bit of time and meet her where she was just in a small way. And suddenly she opened herself up to the thoughts that I had, the ideas that I had, and she started onboarding some things I wanted to teach her. How amazing is that?
And the key in all that is that you were willing to set aside your own agenda. And as adults, we're not always very excited about doing that. We have in mind what we want and what we're going to teach and how we're going to go about this. And we want our kids just to get on board and do it our way. And in that moment, you wanted to do that. But you were willing to say, okay, I'm going to let my agenda go. You didn't even know if you were going to connect at all with her that day. Absolutely. But you allowed her to shine.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, stepdads, stepmoms, there was probably about 100 times that I held on to my agenda to every one time that I let go of it.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But when I did let go, it created an incredible amount of opportunity. And that actually leads us to our next point, which is all about bonding and step relationships.
Yeah.
Because, we talk a lot about step-family bonding, and it can be really challenging to bond with a stepchild. But when you, on the front end, do your work or do your best to try to identify, well, what is the personality type of this child?
Who is this child?
That actually, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit of knowledge to say, I can adjust some of my words, some of my approaches, some of my actions in a way that actually fits who this child is and how they're wired to be. Because the truth is, and a lot of the research shows, that that's not necessarily going to change. It can be influenced over time, but our core wiring, the research would show, stays pretty stable throughout our lifetime. So if we're trying to change kids into a little copy of us as parents or as step-parents, then we're missing the mark and we're actually fighting a losing battle.
Yeah. And, it really doesn't take much to understand these personality types. No. And honey, I remember you saying, I wish I had learned more about Annika's personality type earlier on because that would have benefited our relationship.
Absolutely. I can approach her now. I mean, she's 25 now, but I can approach her in a way that I know fits for her, whether we're face to face or whether we're on the phone or whether we're texting. I've learned a lot more about who she is, and I can fit my approach to her to match who she is. And man, we've got a great connection going, and I think it's even growing.
So it's important to take the time, and we've got a great tool for you to be able to do that as well. It's a book. It's called Nurture by Nature.
Yep. We've referred to it already a couple times.
Yeah. It's by Paul Teager and Barbara Barron-Teager, and we'll give you the details in the show notes. It offers you a detailed process for identifying your child's personality type, and then the bonus is there's some great parenting tips for each of those individual personality types.
That's right.
And honestly, the investment of time and money in this resource is minimal. But the insights it will bring to your parenting is absolutely invaluable.
That's right. I love the way the book's laid out because you can read the first 60 pages and kind of get an idea. It helps you identify using the Myers-Briggs model.
Each of your kids.
Well, what might each of our kids' tendencies be? You know, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to take a survey. You don't have to do any of that. You just observe and then try to make some guesses. And as soon as you get through those first 60 pages, the whole rest of the book, it's laid out by each individual personality type. And within it, it has parenting tips for the toddler stage, for the adolescent stage, for the teen stage. So you just jump right to the couple of pages that can bring some really incredible insight into, oh, this might be one of the reasons that me and my kid keep butting heads. This might be one of the reasons that my stepchild and I just don't seem to be clicking because I'm approaching it this way. But if I simply tweak a little bit and approach the other way, maybe something new will happen.
Yeah. Your approach may be causing your stepchild to be resistant towards you and you're not even aware of it. So this really is a comprehensive parenting tool.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll be honest, I didn't always believe in the benefits of personality types. In fact, I don't like the idea of labeling, and this actually isn't labeling, but I thought it was. And so I really pushed back on this. And Mike was discovering the value of personality types, and I kind of poo-pooed it and didn't really want to hear about it. But once I started learning just about our personality types, honey, and we're on opposite ends on every single
dimension.
Every dimension. We're completely oppositely wired. And once I started looking at this, it really opened my eyes to some things. Like I've shared this before, honey, that for years I thought you were a total control freak because you had to plan things and have it all laid out and have it all figured out. And I thought that was a control issue, but it's really a wiring issue.
It is, yeah.
And it's something that you need in order to be comfortable. It's not something you need in order to control me.
Right.
And so when we start discovering these things, it really impacts how we see each other and how we approach each other. And it gives us depth of understanding that I never would have had through any other means. So, I will say I was skeptical. And if you're skeptical, I understand. But I just encourage you to get the book and start discovering some of this because it really is impactful.
And it's funny that you share it that way, too, because even as you start reading about that, you can't but stop yourself from thinking, oh, wait, this is true in our partnership, too, right? We're talking about parenting primarily. But it's true with each other as well. And vice versa. We work with couples all the time where we talk about their wiring as a couple. And then there's a realization of, oh, wait, our kids have personality types too. Like we could use this. And just a little bit of information can go a really long way.
It really can.
Yeah. Well, this has been a little bit of a unique episode where we're really just having a conversation about this. And we don't have, do's and don'ts in this. And often we'll have, step by step. But we just want to challenge you to remember that, your kids are uniquely different.
Yeah.
They see the world in a different way from each other as well as from you.
Yeah. And it's not good or bad, right or wrong.
It's just different.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And the way we decide to show up as parents as it relates to how they're wired, it will have an impact on their self-perception. And it will have an impact on how easy or challenging, we want teaching to be.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
Yep. And ultimately, I'm so grateful over the long haul about how much I've learned about this, because I believe it's created opportunities for me to bond with Annika in a way I never would have been able to do. And I think that that's true in just about every step relationship. Yeah. So we just wanted to share those reasons for you to maybe jump into learning, whether you do that by grabbing this Nurture by Nature book that we'll link to in the show notes, or whether you do that simply by looking for other tools that are out there. There's all kinds of personality tools and ways to look at our kids and look at ourselves.
So helpful.
The point is, go and find out.
Yeah.
Go and find out, because it'll change how you parent and it'll change how you relate to your kids.
Yeah. And by the way, we want to tell you the outcome of Sunny, or sunflower. I mean, we did end up with this beautiful, very huge blossom.
Yeah.
Once
it was gigantic.
We leaned into Sunny's wiring and helped him to mature.
His wiring.
And gave him the space he needed. Yeah. He was able to blossom, and we enjoyed him all summer long. And we ended up planting that same variety.
Yeah, that's right.
The American Giant several summers in a row, because it was so much fun. Yes, and we did roast his seeds.
We tore him down at the end of the season. We roasted his seeds, and it was great.
But you can discover more about your kids and your stepkids' personality type, and you can help them to blossom too.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
You really can.
I love that.
It just takes a little bit of willingness and learning.
Yep. Well, hey, you know what? Go out and learn, and then stick around, because next week we're staying with the theme of parenting, and we're going to dig into a question that was asked by a listener about, hey, when we've got a challenge between a step parent and a stepchild where maybe I've messed up, I've said or done some things I know I shouldn't have.
Yeah, it was maybe hurtful.
How do I rebuild that bridge? How do I rebuild that connection? We're going to talk all about that next week, and we hope you meet us here.
And it's not just for step parents, bio parents do and say things that are hurtful as well. And we all need to learn how to make things right and reconcile relationships with the kids.
Yeah. So meet us back here next week for that. And until then, that makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.